Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here as we are on Mondays for a poetry discussion. Today's poetry discussion comes to us from Charles Bukowski's The Pleasures of the Damned. The poem is A Poem is a City, and it reads as such. A poem is a city. A poem is a city with streets and sewers filled with saints, heroes, beggars, madmen, filled with banality and booze, filled with rain and thunder and periods of drought. A poem is a city at war. A poem is a city asking a clock why. A poem is a city burning. A poem is a city under guns, its barber shops filled with cynical drunks. A poem is a city where God rides naked through the streets like Lady Godiva, where dogs bark at night and chase away the flag. A poem is a city of poets, most of them quite similar and envious and bitter. A poem is this city now. 50 miles from nowhere, 9:09 in the morning, the taste of liquor and cigarettes, no police, no lovers walking the streets. This poem, this city, closing its doors, barricaded, almost empty, mournful without tears, aging without pity. The hard rock mountains, the ocean like a lavender flame, a moon destitute of greatness, a small music from broken windows. A poem is a city, a poem is a nation, a poem is the world. And now I stick this under glass for the mad editor's scrutiny. And night is elsewhere, and faint gray ladies stand in line. Dog follows dog to estuary. The trumpets bring on gallows as small men rant at things they cannot do. This poem reminds me, first off, how every time I reread a novel, there is a part of that novel. Normally, for me, it's the third quarter of the novel that I seem to completely forget, that I seem to zone out, I guess, during the reading, that I disabuse. I sort of, I leave to the sands of time, and I don't pay attention to. Is it that way for you, that there's always parts of books that you realize you forget? But the main thing that comes to me from this poem is, if a poem is a city, who is this editor in real life? That is to say, the landscape of the poem, as Bukowski is describing it, transcribes onto a city. It is the city, represents the city. But then he mentions an editor. To whom does that editor in the real world transcribe in the city? I think that editor mentioned here in something like disdain is the collective. It is groupthink. It is herd mentality. It is the mob. Not mobsters, not gangsters, but the mob. The way that Twitter, basically, same thing. The mob of people, the mass of men, leading a life of quiet desperation, the mass of men. Because that editor, much like the mob, is always telling you to change things. This doesn't work. That doesn't work. Is always telling you you're not good enough. Your work isn't worthy. Is always telling you someone else is better. That's what the mob does. That's what groupthink does. That's what the herd mentality does. It wants to take the worst bits, the worst moments, the worst things about someone and blow them up. Put them all on display. You see this in today's world most often with the tearing down of idols. Someone had a hero, but that guy did this, that guy was sort of a prick. that guy hated something, that guy did something in his youth, we can't hold them on a pedestal because they weren't 100% of the person that we would want them to be all the time. So they must be torn down. They must be worthless. That's what the mob does. That's what Twitter does. That's what the herd mentality and groupthink and the collective do. That is what the editor in this poem becomes in the city that is the poem. You've got to change things. You're not good enough. Someone else is better. It's amazing, isn't it, how much the mob sounds in public like those wriggling thoughts in the back of your brain sound in private. It's amazing how much that the mob's mentality, the ruthlessness of the collective, can't tell you anything you don't know about yourself. Can't tell you anything that you haven't already worried about. Can't tell you anything you don't know, except when they're making stuff up or eschewing things, screwing things. It's possible. But all that editor does is take things that you know and flip them on you. So why do we live in those places? Why do we pay them credence? Why do we give a damn? Why do we give a damn? Sort of. It's part of the magic of Bukowski. Bukowski, most definitely, didn't really give a damn. Sure, doesn't mean he didn't suffer from it from time to time. Doesn't mean that he was not the great suffering artist, right? He was. Sure he was. But also, he didn't care when it came from you. He beat himself up enough, thank you very much. So that's why we end with this little bit of disdain, as small men rant at things they cannot do. Is that the critic or the editor? You know, we all have critics, we all have editors. There's always someone there to tell us we can't. Part of the thing that I enjoy most about Bukowski is that there was always someone to tell Bukowski that he could not, and sometimes Bukowski would tell himself that he could not. But when he could not, he knew it was his own opinion that mattered. That is all I have for this poetry discussion. I have poetry discussion. I have new videos on the channel Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mondays are for poetry. But I also have videos Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on my personal channel, a link to which can be found in the description below on my personal channel. I talk about nonfiction. I do movie stuff. I do all sorts of different stuff from the stuff that you'll find here. This channel I leave to poetry, short stories, novels, fiction type stuff. Over there I do nonfiction, you know, other stuffs I do over there. So follow me there too.